Well, there's always a bunch, but the worst one, and I've talked about it before. What compounded it to be even worse was was really crazy about this woman, and her name was Susie Allaire, and I've always wanted to see her again. I mention her name occasionally when I do the story, so if she ever sees it, she can contact me. But I was so infatuated by this lovely person, and I convinced her to come with me, and it was the worst gig of my life. And I never saw her again after it. And I understand why. It was a very horrible scenario. There was a comedy club in Boston called the Comedy Connection, and the Comedy Connection was one of the best comedy rooms in the world. It was a small room. It got bigger later, and they moved to a different location. But when it was at the Charles Playhouse, it was pretty much one of the greatest comedy clubs in the world. And it was intimate, and the ceilings were low, and the comics were great, and the community was great, and everyone helped each other out. So it was just really a beautiful scenario. So they also had a bunch of sort of satellite rooms where you'd go out, you'd make $90, to do this club, or you'd make $75 to do this club. And so I was working this show, and it was just north of Plymouth, Massachusetts, where the Pilgrims came in. And it was called the Charlie Horse. It was a perfect name for it. And I'm driving Susie to the gig and everything. And I had to borrow a friend's car because I'm in Boston. I live in New York, and I take her in this car, and it's a beautiful drive. It's, it's the coast of the New England coast. And we're driving down, and the water's beautiful, and everything is great. And she was very shy and very nervous. And as much as I'm a comedian, when I'm shy too, especially with women and dating, and especially at that point in my life, there's always the insecurity that's very hard to beat, is that men and women, or men and men and women and women, whoever you're dating, whoever you like, you turn into like a child when but anyway, and that's how I felt. So we get to the venue, and it looks like it's a biker bar, and there's a bunch of motorcycles out front, which is great. I've worked motorcycle bars, and I've always had a good time. I've never been in a situation where I worked a biker bar and it wasn't fantastic. So we pulled up and looked in, and we opened the door, and it's like I don't know if you remember the end of Blazing Saddles when they're all out having a big fight in the street. Mm-hmm. Well, people were fighting. It was like 150 people in there hitting each other with pool cues and chains and just pounding each other. And Susie, who's so demure, is like scared. And I'm like, how am I going to do comedy in this place? And where is the stage? And it doesn't look like there's any, because pool tables everywhere. And the guy who was at the door, I said, where's the comedy part of it? And he goes, hey, it's over there. And he pointed to his left. So we leave the room with all of the killing and the fighting and the beating up and all that kind of stuff. And we go, and there's a separate room for the comedy. And sadly enough, we get in the room, and there's only women in the room. And I think they're and this is very sad, the beaten and battered women of the guys in the other room. And I say that because it was a lot of black eyes and a woman in a sling, and there was a woman with a baby carriage and drinking a beer. And it was really very sad. Now, again, I'm going to make anyone laugh, and I think these people need to laugh, or they want to laugh, or whatever. Susie's freaking out. And so now sit her in the front, and they start the show, and they go, from New York, in the crowd, woo, the worst thing to do in a Massachusetts place. And I go up, and they're not paying attention. They don't want comedy. They just want to talk among themselves. They're all friends. They come probably every Wednesday, which is the comedy night, and they all hang out together, and they're just waiting for these guys to stop fighting so they can go home. And again, it's very, very sad. It's nothing to joke about, violence at all, or the way these people are treated. And, so I really, with Ernest, I wanted these people to laugh and have a good time. They weren't paying attention. I was a pain in the ass that I was there talking into a mic while they wanted to chat with each other. And so anyway, so I go up and I start doing it, and they're not paying attention. They're not listening. Nothing is happening, and it's really hard. And the only person watching is Susie, because she's kind of in the front, and she's looking at me, and she looks like I want to be anywhere else in the world but right where I am right now. And I'm not getting laughs. Obviously, no one's paying attention. Susie's too uptight to laugh, and probably I wasn't funny or feeling funny, or in this scenario, I didn't have the experience enough to work a room like this and turn it around. It's horrible. And the only person who was watching me was the woman with the baby in the stroller drinking the beer while she's pushing the stroller. So I said to her, I said, well, at least you're paying attention. And she just goes, F you, and throws the bottle at me. And I duck, and the bottle hits the back wall, and I'm completely drenched, and shards of glass are in my hair and down my sport jacket. And I'm drenched, and glass is all through my body. And Susie like wants to run out of there, and luckily the other comedian showed up because he was late, and I had to keep going until he got there. And I just ran out of there. It was the longest ride home, 35 minutes. It seemed like forever and ever, and it was horrible. I've never seen Susie since, but it goes down as the worst gig of my life. And it not only was it a horrible gig, but I felt bad and
Right.
sad for the people that were involved.